An adjunct professor will not be rehired for the next semester due to her comments about Otto Warmbier, the 22-year-old man who unfortunately was detained during his trip in North Korea, came back to the United States with he was unconscious, in a coma, and then unfortunately later died. Now, this professor from the University of Delaware said some pretty unfortunate things about him. Let me give you her comments. She wrote on her personal Facebook page that former detainee Otto Warmbier was, quote, typical of a mindset of a lot of young, white, rich, clueless males who come into my classes. She added that Warmbier got exactly what he deserved. Now, keep in mind, he traveled to North Korea. He had taken down some sort of banner in the hotel that he was staying in. It was a propaganda banner. He later put it back up, but it didn't matter. At that point, they had decided to detain him as he was going to the airport to fly back to the United States. He was sentenced to 15 years of hard labor. We don't know exactly what they did to him and why he was in a coma when he arrived back to the United States, but he died as a result of whatever abuse he was exposed to. So making statements like that it's beyond insensitive. It's just not well advised, right? And keep in mind that this is a professor. This is someone who deals with students from all different types of backgrounds, and if she has this very clear bias against any group of students, I think it's problematic. So Katherine, this is according to a statement from the school. They said that Katherine Dettwyler, who last taught in the spring as an adjunct faculty member, will not be rehired to teach at the university in the future. They said that her statements do not reflect the beliefs of that university.
I disagree with the decision. So first, let me say, saying that he got exactly what he deserved is way over the top. No one deserves to die. No one deserves to get 15 years of hard labor, which he was not. He didn't get to serve the full sentence, partly because he got so sick that he died. And nobody deserves to get anything remotely similar to that for temporarily stealing a propaganda poster in North Korea. On the other hand, and I don't know what him being white has anything to do with this, right? So those are all the things she said that I don't agree with. On the other hand, saying that Otto Warmbier was misguided in going to North Korea is a very normal, rational thing to say. Impolitic to say and insensitive to say right after he dies, although when else would you ever talk about Otto Warmbier? You wouldn't bring it up a year and a half later, but I don't think you should have gone to North Korea. And if you go to North Korea right now as a tourist, I think you're crazy.
But her statement wasn't about how it was a bad idea for him to travel to North Korea, right? Her statement was more about, and I'm giving you what was implied. This isn't what she said exactly verbatim, but she was essentially saying, here's an entitled white guy going to another country thinking he can do whatever he wants to do and get away with it. Well, he gets what he deserves, right? That was really the emphasis of what she was saying, and I think that that's not the right way to go about things, right? So for me, and then she goes on to rant about her white male students. And to me, that's problematic, right? And we would have, we'd be very critical of a professor who said that about a group of black students, for instance, or a group of Muslim students. You are an educator. You are not supposed to treat students differently based on race or religion and all that. So for me, the most problematic thing was not only the fact that she was incredibly insensitive about someone who just died in a pretty tragic way, but the fact that she showed that she has a certain bias against certain students. And that shouldn't have any place in an educational setting. That's my issue with what she had to say.
So that's why I agree that I think it's a really close call, because the part that bothered me the most of that first sentence was who come into my classes, meaning that she has some preconceived notion about some set of folks who come into their classes. She mentioned, we didn't mention, she mentioned white, she mentioned male, and she mentioned rich. Even if she left it at rich, it still has some issues. So are you gonna mark down rich kids or have some sort of bias against them? On the other hand, that's the point of academic freedom, is that you allow people to have different opinions. And so now are we gonna fire all the professors in the country who thought it was a bad idea to go to North Korea and that was an entitled, stupid thing to do? Now I feel, again, I'm not saying of Otto because he's dead, but don't go to North Korea. and think that it's a cool tourist trip because somebody from Vice went, okay, you're not Dennis Rodman. Right. It's a really, really stupid idea. Okay, it was a poster. Did he even know or think that he was stealing it? You know,
right.
You know what I'm saying? You might break some other minor infraction. You might have no infractions, but they think it'll help them politically to basically kidnap an American. It's not a free country. They have gulags and concentration camps. So don't flippantly go there. So that's not about Otto, it's about the next set of people. So if you're a professor raging about that, I don't blame you, I rage about it.
Yeah, I rage about that as well. I don't know if I rage about it, but I have openly said that I think it's a really bad idea to travel to countries like North Korea or some of the countries in the UAE, keeping it 100, right? I think that there are a lot of other great places to visit around the world, and you're better suited and safer in places that don't have human rights violations and things like that. But for me, she went above and beyond, and I would be concerned if I was like the chair of that department. She teaches anthropology, by the way. I would be concerned about what type of biases are at play and whether or not it impacts the way that she treats certain students. That really did it for me. And more importantly, can we finally get to a place where we're civil, right? Where we actually understand that there are family members of this victim who are grieving right now, and you're talking openly on social media about how he got what he deserved. Just be a human being for once. That's another part of it that just drives me crazy. I mean, we have gotten so toxic in society where we just say whatever we want to say without thinking about it or thinking about the ramifications.
Yeah, so you know what, let's do a poll on it because we're split on it. I bet you a lot of you are split on it. I'm curious what you think. So let's do tytnetwork.com/fired and we'll put that up after the show. We'll have it in the link in the description box for you guys where you can easily vote. I'm curious, do you think this professor should have been fired or not? And good case, obviously, both ways. We don't want to prejudging the students in our classroom, but at the same time, there is academic freedom, and half of what she said was, in my opinion, perfectly reasonable. Membership helps fund the Young Turks. You know one great thing about that? That means we're not accountable to anyone but you guys. That's why we're strong together, because we built this show around you. Come build it even bigger and better at tytnetwork.com/join.